Hey there, friends. I hope you're doing well and getting some paint on your minis. Today we are talking about the game Infinity by Corvus Belli. And yes, they make metal miniatures. I don't tend to work with metal miniatures too often. It's just something that's a little outside of my normal wheelhouse. They're a little more difficult to work with than plastic. However, these models are just amazing. Like, just look at the detail on these. They're more of a true scale than what you get from a lot of other companies. So a lot of the proportions are a little more accurate compared to what you're going to get from a lot of other games like Warhammer, War Machine, stuff like that. You can see here just how detailed this model is. It's really nice. Here's a comparison to the last model I painted, Gambit from Marvel Crisis Protocol. You can just see the size difference due to the proportions being kind of brought down a little. They're near the same scale, but yeah, it's just a lot more realistic here. They're just very beautiful sculpts. So just a bit about the game itself. Infinity is a cyberpunk skirmish level miniatures game, so you only ever really have about 15 models or so in your force. It's set 175 years in the future, during a time where the human race has discovered wormholes, allowing for interstellar travel to new galaxies. So basically this big space race ensues, and humanity is split into a bunch of different alliances. And then all these different alien factions start showing up, and they all are competing for the same advanced tech and rare resources across the universe. The aesthetics of the game, it's very obviously manga and anime inspired. It takes pretty heavily from published works like Ghost in the Shell or Akira. Basically this post-cyberpunk, high-tech kind of future world. It's a very nice aesthetic, a change of pace from all these other different war games out there. It's really cool. You get some weird things from like high-tech guns and space police and crazy motorcycles that can turn into robots, to things like werewolves. Legit, there's werewolves in this game. So why am I talking about the game in the first place? Well, I think it deserves the attention. The game's been around for like 18 years, as originally released in 2005. And it's had a pretty dedicated following for pretty much that whole time. It's never done as well as something like Warhammer, of course, because Games Workshop be Games Workshop. They do their thing, you know. But Corvus Belli has been riding this Infinity train for a while now, and honestly, I don't see it going anywhere. It's just has this really nice pocket in the war game world. It's kind of filling that pocket all on its own, because it's just doing stuff that no other game in this hobby is managing to do. So right now the game is in its 4th edition. It's called N4, but there's also an introductory system out called Code 1, which is basically like a more simplified version of N4 that you can start out with, and then once you feel comfortable with the rules, you can move into the full N4 rules. And the best part about those rules is that they are completely free. Now, there are other companies out there that have their big rule set all completely free online, but the biggest game out there, Warhammer, Age of Sigmar or 40K by Games Workshop, their rules aren't free. If you get into those games, you're going to be spending money out your ass just to have the rules to play the game, and then they get faxed, and then you gotta print off sheets online or buy a supplementary book later, or replace your book or whatever. That's not the case here. You just go to infinitythewiki.com, and all the rules there are free, and they're even toggleable, so you can hit a button and have only the Code 1 rules showing, or you can toggle on the N4 rules and have everything available to you right there. Also, if you go to Google and just search for Infinity Army, there's an awesome web app, or you can also get it on your phone, iOS or Android. Infinity Army. It's an app that gives you access to all of the stats for all of the models, for all of the factions in the game. So you just jump on there and you can select your units and see what options they have available to them, how many points they cost, so you can build a list out of them. Once you've built a list, you can hit a big play button, and then it jumps you into like the game where you can track the health of all of your models and the states that they are in. It's awesome. It is absolutely amazing. I haven't seen any company do it as well as they have done it, with completely free rules, completely free army building, play the game tools. Corvus Belli is doing it right. If you check it out, like just look at that Infinity Army app, it kind of tells you something about, you know, how much care is put into the game, because it's just an awesome tool. It's a great boon to the community. Check it out. Something else pretty important for these games is the price point. For $140-ish Canadian, you can get one of the big starter boxes for Infinity, which in my opinion is the best way to get into the game. So for that, you get 2 factions. You get 7 models for both of them, which is about half of a tournament size list for the game, which is usually around 15 models. You also get custom dice for both of those factions. You get templates and tokens and all the little bits you would need to play the game. You get the Code 1 rulebook, so you can get started. And you also get the best thing, in my opinion, a bunch of this really, really, really thick card terrain. It's super, super sturdy terrain. You get like 2 big buildings, 2 small buildings, a bunch of walls and barriers and signs and such. It's a really good start to your terrain collection. And this game is like pretty terrain dependent. It's very important to the rules of the game. You can get like expansion packs for the terrain for like $30 or so, $35. So you can fill a table like pretty cheaply. So yeah, the starter box is a really, really, really good price point. You and a buddy can split it, spend like $70 each or something, and you both have like half of an army, plus some terrain and such to get going. So yeah, I haven't seen a starter set as value packed as the one that Infinity has. The newest starter set is called like Operation Blackwind, but any of the other ones are just fine as well, like Operation Kaldstrom or Operation Wildfire, etc. They just give you different factions, different terrain. As far as the actual gameplay goes, one of the most exciting things about the system is that it's always your turn, essentially. You're very engaged when playing Infinity because of the ARO system. So when it is your opponent's turn, anytime they do something with one of their models on the board, if one of your models has line of sight to it, they get to make what's called an ARO, an automatic reaction order. Essentially, it lets them react to whatever the opponent is doing. So there's this huge importance set on things like terrain and line of sight in the game, because if you have vision to your opponent's models, then if they want to do something with those models, then you're going to be able to react. Now, on your turn, you usually are getting more actions than somebody is going to get reactions, so you can generally do more on your turn. You can always do more on your turn, your actual turn, but you're still going to be engaged when it's not your turn, because you're looking for those areas of line of sight so that your models that you've hopefully set up in a good position can react to your opponent when they're taking their turn. So there's basically never any low points in a game. You're always engaged at all times. Now, when I say actions, that's actually alluding to another important part of the system, and that's the order system. So essentially, every model that you bring to a game is going to generate these things called orders, and you spend those in order to activate models that you have brought to the battle. Those orders, more often than not, are able to be spent on any model that you have brought in your list. So while a model generates an order, it doesn't necessarily have to be used on that model, except for certain scenarios. I'm not going to get too deep into the system right now. But it's really interesting because you have all these orders, this pool of orders that you can spend on your models, and you need to decide, like, where am I going to spend these? Which models do I want to activate this turn? What are my important pieces that I need to have do something? And which models can I leave for this turn? They can just kind of sit there and maybe defend this area of the board or that or whatever kind of thing. So the order system is like this really interesting mechanic. You could spend all of your orders on one model if you want and try and Rambo them and just like run up the board and do as much as possible and try and win the game for you. However, of course, as I just talked about, the ARO system, your enemy is going to be able to react to you if they've set up a good defensive position. So if you send one model up the board, most likely they don't have a perfect path to run down the board and not get shot back at while they're trying to do whatever they're trying to do. So it's really got this nice back and forth of, you can freely spend all these orders on your army, but there are consequences to kind of going all in on one piece because of this ARO system. So it's really just very neat mechanic that I've never really seen in any other game. Something else interesting about the system is this emphasis on hidden information. Everybody has a lieutenant in their list, and if you kill the lieutenant, then bad things happen. But you don't necessarily know who the lieutenant is in your enemy's list from the beginning of the game. Models can camouflage as something else, so you don't know what they are when they are on the board. It could be a model, it could be a mine, it could be nothing. There are models that can combat jump or parachute onto the board, and you don't know what they are either, and they're just kind of lying in wait. So it's all this like really neat stuff that you can kind of play mind games with. And when you build your list on Infinity Army, you can actually print out your list and provide that to your opponent, and it'll give you like a friendly version of the list that you can share with your friend that doesn't expose everything to them if you have hidden information built in. So it's it really kind of emphasizes the use of hidden information and helping you apply that in the game. And I could go on and on about the proxy-friendly nature of the game, the intricate hacking system that is like nothing I've ever seen before, or even the official ITS Open Tournament system, which has a built-in ELO ranking system with global leaderboards. And it makes it easy for event organizers to set up and manage events for players and to find those events. If the game interests you at all, I highly suggest checking it out. The community is friendly and the people behind the game are just as personable. If you enjoyed this video at all, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'd love to read your comments as well. And as always, paint today for a better tomorrow. Thanks, and have a great day. Bye.